Welcome to the Operate Podcast, where we give you a behind-the-scenes look at company building from the perspective of the builders themselves. This is how we operate.
Welcome to the Operate Podcast. I'm Kerry Ransom. Today's episode is sponsored by Hunt Club, a new category of search firm that leverages the power of relationships and referrals to find you the best talent for your organization. They've used technology to transform thousands of subject matter experts into the world's most powerful talent network. And they've got about 10,000 industry leaders that refer top talent nationwide to the exciting positions that come through Hunt Club. If you want to learn more, you can reach out to me, or you can go to huntclub.com and tell them that Kerry sent you. I'm super excited to have Bob Nunn with me on the show today. And before we get to hear from Bob, let me tell you a little bit about him. He is currently the CEO of a battery-free startup called Everactive, and they are a deep tech company, really, that self-powers IoT devices. They've created and pioneered an ultra-low power circuit capability, and we'll talk more about that today. I also want to talk to Bob. He calls himself a trust-first manager. And I love that philosophy. I think we'll have some good discussion about that. And I think that's probably served him really well during this last year in the pandemic, as Everactive has really thrived during it, especially as they had to go remote like many other companies. So we'll talk about how that philosophy has really helped. He's worked successfully with a number of startups over 30 plus years in various stages of company growth. He's also raised a ton of capital, including almost 100 million at Everactive alone. He previously had a company called Fulcrum Microsystems that he was the CEO, and he successfully sold that to Intel. And he spent several years there in senior roles as well. So we'll talk about some of his experience in the Intel culture. And finally, Bob, like me, is also a UCLA Bruin. So always great to have a fellow Bruin on the podcast. Bob, really great to have you here today.
Well, thanks, Kerry. Thanks for the intro, and it's great to be with you today.
Awesome. Well, I gave kind of a quick intro to Everactive. You know, coming out of Intel, obviously you had a tremendous number of choices. What led you to get involved specifically with this company?
Well, actually, the big decision was to decide to go back into a startup, knowing all the work and effort that goes into that. But once I had made the decision that I wanted to go back in a startup, there are four things that I look for, and that this is, I think, has been true throughout my career. But the first thing is I look for something that's a big opportunity. We talk in the startup space about changing the world. But it's really true in the companies I've got involved in, there's been the opportunity to have a major impact on society. And so that was one of the things I wanted to find, a big opportunity, something that could have a major impact. And then, of course, the second thing is if you're going to take a big shot like that, you need to have the right financial backing. So to find an opportunity that was appealing and that had the right financial backing was kind of the bar that I set to really start looking at companies. But then the other key things are really the technology that powers the breakthrough. That is it defensible? Where is it coming from? What can you do with it? And then the most important thing is really the people that are involved. And so throughout my career, I've always joined companies after they've got started. In one case, it was just the two founders. I came in to help them get started, but I've never taken that grand leap of starting the company myself. I've always come in after there's at least the germ of the idea, or in the case with Everactive, the technology already existed and was proven. And in this case, it was really the people. It was the founders, Ben and Dave, and the team that they had put together already when I joined that really attracted me to Everactive. It was just a great group of folks.
That's great background. I think a very instructive model that I think a lot of people could use for how they think about it. Interestingly, I've worked in a huge number of startups across my career through the early to growth stages, and somewhat similarly, in most cases, I was not the founder, but I came in to a situation that covered a lot of those characteristics that you just described. So that's really, I like how you've summarized that. I think my audience will get a lot of value from that model.
But you also mentioned I've been involved in a lot of stages, and I have everything from the two guys and a dog all the way through companies that have gone public or been sold. And this, when I joined Everactive, is my favorite stage. So that was the other thing I was looking for, was something where the first part of getting the technology together and kind of trying to put it together into something useful had been done. And it was really a question of, how do you take this to market? What's the value proposition for the end customer? What is the business model? How are you going to go scale? So those are the things that I've learned throughout my career that I enjoy the most. So at this point, as you mentioned, 30 years in, it was like, okay, this is a perfect fit of the people, technology, the opportunity, and that's one of the things. The opportunity in IoT is so large. It's just amazingly large. Biggest opportunity I've ever faced in my career.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we were saying just before we started how, while we feel like we've been hearing about it for a long time, it's still very early days. So let's talk about a couple customer uses just to orient folks a little bit more to Everactive. So, share a couple early customer examples.
Yeah, I'd say one of the problems with the IoT is there's just too many use cases. So there's just, it's a plethora of opportunity, and it's easy to get confused. And that's what we've seen with some of the early entrants into the IoT. They tried to become this platform of, across all these different opportunities. If I can just have this little slice, then I'm going to be a big company. When you remove the battery out of the IoT devices, the opportunities just multiply. So you really it opens up this whole new world of what you're capable in terms of connecting to the physical world. So one of the challenges for a company like Everactive is really to focus in on what are you going to do in this huge opportunity. How are you going to solve a problem for a customer? How do you focus in on that? And the process we went through was really to look at various markets, and we honed in on the industrial segment, primarily because it was a place where monitoring or sensing technologies have already been adopted. And so we wouldn't have to teach people about how to use sensors, but we would be on a mission to teach them to put those sensors everywhere. So by removing the battery, you could drive this concept of pervasive monitoring everywhere. And then within that segment, we decided the best way to go to market was to solve a complete problem for a customer. So instead of giving them a piece of the solution and then having them be responsible for adding the other pieces to solve their problem, we said, let's go from soup to nuts, provide a full solution on something. So we picked initially the steam distribution system. There's a valve within that system that is critical to its proper operation, called the steam trap. Actually removes the condensate out of the steam distribution system. And we said, all right, let's go monitor steam traps, but let's do it in a way that we make it super easy for the customer to use. And because it's batteryless, it's super easy to maintain. And then we decided the best way to solve that for them was as a service. So we actually go in, we provide all this technology, all this deep batteryless neat stuff that we do, but ultimately we're charging them a service for providing them insights as to what's going on with their steam system or with this particular asset, the steam trap. So that it requires that level of focus in all the way down the chain to really come up with something that then has a unique value proposition for the customer, where they go, hey, you know what, if you solve my steam, if I no longer have to monitor steam traps, or I can do it continuously, there's a big benefit that I get from that. We've since moved on. We're doing something similar with rotating machinery. And part of the idea behind our company is to work with partners where we expand the opportunities that we go after more than a startup could do by itself. We actually multiply that by working with industrial partners using our technology.
Very cool. So you kind of went deep into an application like steam traps. Have you gone all the way? You said you're doing monitoring, and are you at the point where you're literally setting up your own monitoring facility? You're doing that remotely. You're doing alerting or dispatch or anything like that when people need to go address something? Or as I think about the full stack solution, I mean, how far do you go here?
Yeah, it's actually fun. One of the things I talk with investors about a lot is this need to be a full stack solution today in the IoT, and that you can compare it somewhat to what happened in computer, advances in the computer industry along the way. When the mainframes first came out, the original companies were providing the chips as well as the systems and the operating systems and the applications on top of those. So the IoT is at that stage today, even though we've been talking about it for a while. We still are in a fully integrated solution approach is going to win the day. That's our opinion. So we do our own semiconductors. We integrate the electronics that we create with the ability to harvest energy from the environment and the ability to sense things, the transducers that connect to a physical world. But then we also provide our own networking technology on top of that. We provide all of the capability to bring the data to the cloud and manage the data, as well as the analytics to turn that data into insights. And then we provide alerts and dashboards or interfaces for the customers to be able to see the value of that data. And then as part of the service, we manage that whole network of sensors, because one of the things we found is our industrial customers are very sophisticated in terms of running their factory, but not as sophisticated in running large networks of electronic things.
Well, it's not the business they're in, right? So that's
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. I think we can all relate. Our Wi-Fi system at home is a pain in the butt.
That's right.
And so imagine having thousands of sensors in this distributed network. So we actually take that burden on remotely, as you mentioned, to make sure that all the sensors are running correctly, or that people haven't disconnected the gateway from the power or things like that. So that is the service that we provide today. We have attracted attention of some of the large industrial players. Our partner in the steam distribution world is a company called Armstrong International, and they would like to work with us to take that even further. And you mentioned about taking action when you find a fault. That's not something we're expert at, but Armstrong and their sales channel, that's what they do all the time. So the combination of the technology along with the industry expertise and experience is really where I see the huge benefit to the customer. So I'm not announcing anything today, but that is the direction that we're headed, where it's really to improve that service and that steam management, steam distribution system management even further through partnerships.
It's so cool. I mean, what the entrepreneur in me, my brain's just going, thinking so many opportunities that this enables, number one, which is interesting for other startup or solutions to other problems out there that you are enabling. But to your point, in the early days of most breakthroughs, it requires that integrated full stack solution, because people can't generally get there on their own. And that keeps a lot of technologies on shelves for a long time when people don't go piece it all together.
Right, and it's an expensive proposition. That's part of the problem. Is, and again, my second pillar of what I was looking for is the financial backing, so that you can go do all that. So we have engineering expertise in 5 different disciplines.
Wow.
All the way up the stack. We're selling into a market that's very conservative. They don't want to adopt new technologies that are going to cause a problem. They don't really trust startups as a starting point. So, all that turns into a lot of capital is required to get started. So it takes the right financial backers. And fortunately, early on, the company paired up with New Enterprise Associates in Silicon Valley. And they've been great in terms of looking at the long-term potential for batteryless technology in the IoT, and understanding that, yes, today it's an integrated solution, very expensive to bring to market, but as we move forward, that will start to disintegrate. Sure. And there'll be opportunities to be that platform supplier throughout the industry.
Yeah, great. I think that's such great perspective, Bob. You just so often I see a lot of startups in the work that I do day to day, and so many times people are pitching me a platform, and they don't have a customer, they don't have any traction, and I generally have this view of you sort of earn your way to becoming a platform. And so, especially in an emergent technology like yours, that plan makes so much sense. So thank you for sharing that. One last question though, do you find that these early adopter customers have to almost run parallel processes to start? So they implement all of your sensors and start to trust you to help them. Are they still for a while running their old processes of checking things or whatever they were doing previously, if anything?
Yeah, I'd say it's more of a phased rollout is what we see people doing. So our pitch to the customer is let's go monitor everything.
Mm-hmm.
And, pervasive monitoring, if you don't have to do the maintenance, your maintenance is free because you don't have to go out and change batteries.
That's right.
Then you can put this in hard to reach, difficult places or in lots of places. So one of the things that made steam traps interesting is there's just so many of them in a factory that it's difficult to, you'd be trading off manual maintenance of steam traps today for the manual maintenance of sending someone around to change batteries tomorrow. And the customers just aren't willing to do that. So that's the real benefit to the customer that we bring can be seen in small deployments first. And so what we see are kind of these phased deployments to start out with a few. We say, let's do them all. They say, okay, well, let's do a small subset. And then we see an expansion as they start to build up confidence in the solution. They see the value. And normally we thought that would take longer, but within 3 months, we can demonstrate to the customer the value that the solution is bringing in terms of savings in energy or improvements in some of their environmental concerns or even safety concerns. And so then we start the expansion process within the factory. And because the companies we're dealing with are very large multinational companies, we start talking about other factories. And then the natural extension of that conversation is to talk about other assets that we can monitor with this batteryless technology. And that's how we move from steam distribution systems to rotating machinery. And then, of course, we'll be adding other assets to that list as well. So it really is we talk a lot in the as a service business, talk about the land and expand
strategy.
That's what
I was going to you stole my thunder, Bob. I was going to say to my audience, ladies and gentlemen, this is what is known as land and expand. So you nailed it. Absolutely.
And it's a little frustrating, actually. The other thing you'll hear about is pilot purgatory. So you do this test and then it never turns into anything else. And to our credit, we have not had to deal with pilot purgatory. So the fortunate thing is the demonstration of the value is so strong that we move fairly quickly from this let's try it to let's go and expand it. And we're now seeing customers moving from 100 node or a few hundred node trials to multi-thousand node deployments. So that's really when you're starting to get the momentum behind the solution that people are saying, okay, I see it. If I see the value, let's go ahead and do this and do it in a large way. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, so much value in here for entrepreneurs and people operating businesses. I talk a lot to, you're an enterprise solution, but the days, we had earlier in our careers for sure, those days and years where it was long sales cycle, huge capital expenditure decisions. And now a lot of it has changed to what you were describing. You can start with a pilot, you get in quickly, you prove your value, you start to expand from there. And that seems to be the much more prevalent enterprise approach these days.
Yeah, well, it's lower risk for the end customer, right? So they can try it out before they take the big dive in.
That's right. So great jumping off point. So the way I think about what you're doing, you really are one of these key bridges to adding intelligence to the physical world. In so many, it's amazing how dumb, if to use that quote term, much of the physical world is, and you're really bringing this intelligence layer. So as you think about just in the world, the expansion of IoT, what are the kinds of exciting things that you feel like we as consumers in the world should expect to see when you have these much broader sensor networks out there?
Well, yes, that definitely is the point. So this whole idea of connecting the physical world to the digital world, in ways that were never considered possible before is really what Everactive is after, but I think a lot of the IoT companies. But I think the most exciting things are the ones we haven't really figured out yet. So the concept of generating new streams of data, that you never thought were possible before. When you remove the battery, and all of a sudden the new possibilities open up. And then the advanced AI capabilities that we're starting to see develop at the edge. And at Everactive, the edge is the asset itself. It's the real edge of the physical world, where you can have dramatic compute capability, the ability to do inference of images and different things locally. And then the idea of all these data streams and how they interact, I think it leads your imagination to a whole new way to interact with the physical world. And so I think we don't know yet what the real outstanding applications of the futures are. One of the things we talk about and that we're working towards is this concept of Googling the physical world. So something as simple as asking a question in an industrial environment. Believe it or not, we hear this from customers. This is the question they would like to get answered. Where is my forklift? And where's the nearest forklift? Or things like what are my gauges saying right now? So my analog gauges, how can I get a look at those? Or what's my carbon footprint reduction over the last quarter? Is my shipment, my overseas shipment, is it still secure? Just simple things like that you can get just simply the same way we get information through Google today, asking a question, and it comes back and you've got the data sources to be able to say, yep, here's the answer to that question.
Yeah, that's a really interesting topic. It's almost that our imaginations are only limited then, and we need to equip folks to be able to ask more, better, deeper questions.
Exactly. And the idea of how all this data works together, we're seeing this in the steam distribution systems. We start out monitoring just this one valve, but when you put hundreds or thousands of monitoring points across the steam distribution system, and you're taking data continuously, that's one of the big advantages of our batteryless approach, is that we're not trying to manage the power of the battery. We're constantly generating new energy from the environment. So we take tons of data. We have massive amounts of data. You start to see things within the steam system itself that are completely independent of the steam traps, but you see anomalies. And this is one of the big benefits that our customers see, is all of a sudden they go, oh yeah, we've been wondering what's going on in that section of the plant. Through this data, we can see that maybe things are sized incorrectly, or we've got a problem with the boiler, or something else is going on, or some interaction between equipment. So I think that the way these data streams start to work together is really the big opportunity, and we've just started scratching the edge of that today.
Very cool. Well, what do you have on your list as kind of the thing you're the most excited about for Everactive this year?
For this year, it's growth. So this is for me the fun part. We increased our annual recurring revenue 4x last year, and we're on track to do better than that this year. And all the challenges that come with growth, so growing the team, bringing in the right people, the right expertise, but folks that still mesh up with the company and the culture that we're creating, putting in the systems to help prepare you for that larger company that you're becoming. Those are all the things that I love about building startups. So this is, to me, my favorite part. So we've got the products, we've got the value proposition, the customers have accepted it. We're now seeing people starting to ramp up in big ways, and it's really just execution.
That's exciting. Well, and a good transition. So I talked a little bit about your philosophy as a trust first manager, and I want to get to that in a minute. This isn't your first, we talked about this a couple times. This isn't your first rodeo, first time as an entrepreneur or CEO, but each one's a little different. Anything that you can point to that you've seen that's different this time, or that you've learned about yourself through this particular tour at Everactive?
That's interesting. There are a lot of similarities as you go through this company building process from company to company, but they are all unique for sure. When I think about what I've learned recently, I would say the biggest thing I've learned about myself, at least, is while I was at Intel, and that I tried really hard to find a place within a big company, because my whole career has been in startups. I started out at a big company early on in my career, but was very dissatisfied with that experience and quickly moved into startups.
I can relate to that.
Yeah. So at Intel, I learned that part of the issues I had early on in my career were really about that company, not so much just about big companies. But some of them are, big company challenges are different than, and I would say challenges and opportunities are different than what you have at a startup.
Sure.
But I think what I learned about myself is that the environment where people are such an integral part, every single individual is a critical component. The individuals are much more important than the organizations, the bureaucracy, or the systems. That's really what I love. And so after I was at Intel for 6 years, I had 4 different jobs, I think, in those 6 years. I kept trying, finally ended up in Intel Capital doing investing with startups. But I realized that, no, this is what I love, the company building process. So that was probably my biggest individual growth over the last few years, is really that, no, I enjoy this. This is what I want to do. I've retired a couple of times in my career, but I'm simply just, I enjoy this too much to stop yet. So that doesn't really answer your question, but that's probably the biggest thing. I would say Everactive, in terms of companies that I've run or been involved with, startups, the potential for Everactive is the largest that I've been involved in. As we talked about, the opportunity for the IoT, and just this opportunity, as we talked about earlier, of creating a platform solution eventually that is, this is the way you do batteryless monitoring. That's part of our mission, is really to continue to grow the technology and the practices that we put in place as the right way to do batteryless monitoring or IoT monitoring as we go forward. So I'd say that's one of the things that is exciting about Everactive. It's just such a large opportunity. It's also a tremendous team, and I would love to take credit for it, but the culture of the company is really outstanding. And it was one of the reasons that I came in, was that the culture that the founders had created or were building, what they call the core values, were right in line with the way I feel. This trust first management that we're going to talk about, and the idea of intellectual honesty and doing things, trying new things and things like that.
Well, let's move into that a little bit. So, this last year has been a real challenge for a lot of executives and companies in dealing with this pandemic. You, as CEO, had to deal with it like many others. You describe how that culture has really, helped you and enabled you through that challenge.
Yeah, one of our core values is what we call one team. And that really came about because the company, we are founded by 2 professors, one at the University of Virginia and the other at the University of Michigan. And we've built teams around them in those locations. And then we also have the team in Silicon Valley. So we were geographically diverse even before the pandemic. And so with these multiple locations, it's easy to have, that's the CBIL office, or that's the way they do it in Ann Arbor or whatever. So it was really a focus on, no, we're all in this together. We're 3 different locations, but we are one team. And so that one team concept has really been the foundation of this as we've gone to a completely remote workforce, and the ability to manage that and I think, again, trust is a big part. When you're not seeing people, you don't know what their work hours are. You're not in the office with them every day. Trust becomes a much more important factor And it can drive you crazy if you don't have that ingrained as part of the personality of the company and the way people work together.
Any permanent changes that you see happening through this past year?
Yeah, I think like a lot of companies, we're embracing the concept of a hybrid workforce. So some people will work in offices and some people will work other places. And then the whole notion that employees can work successfully from anywhere. So you know, I've got employees now that have moved to ski resorts for the winter so that they can ski in their off time and then work you know, from this temporary housing. That works today. So with the advancements in communication technologies and the ability to move information back and forth, that's quite doable. So I think embracing that and putting the systems in place so that we are one team, so everyone has the same opportunities regardless of where they work, whether it be remote or in an office or, you know, on a ship, on a sailing boat or whatever, that you embrace that. And I would have to say that it's been an easy transition for us in the pandemic, and I feel like it will be an easy transition coming out of the pandemic because of that. We've already embraced that core value of, yes, we're all in this together, and you know, our work is distributed across all these different geographies already.
At this point, will you keep the 3 offices?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are some of us, me included, that love working in offices.
Sure.
So and then we do have we have a manufacturing group which has been in the office for most of this year, getting our products out. And then we have labs in each of the offices where the engineers can go in, you know, the hardware as well as the software guys, especially embedded software guys, need those environments. So we will continue to provide all 3 offices. We're actually increasing the size of the offices, and we just got a new office in Santa Clara. We're increasing the size in Ann Arbor and Charlottesville over the near future. So we see that as part of our future, but with this added component of being much more flexible about having people work from anywhere.
So you mentioned that there was great values alignment with the founders, and that was one of the things that excited you to join. Do you kind of have your own operating principles that you tend to work from?
I do. I love to take credit for them, but it actually was from a talk that one of the CEOs from one of my first companies gave to the company when the company was in trouble. And so he was trying to be motivational, but he was digging down deep for the core values that he found important. And they stuck with me, and I've actually used them throughout my career, both in the companies I've run and in the companies I've been involved with, either as a board member or as an advisor. And so there's 3 of them. The first one is the concept of self-fulfilling prophecies. And I love this one because it for a startup, you are doing things that other people think are impossible. So yeah, I can't tell you how many times people go, wow, it seems like what you guys are doing at Everactive is magic. Well, yeah, it kind of seems that way because we're able to make things run without battery or any other visible source of energy. But you know, to make the impossible happen, you have to believe that you can do it. Now, it doesn't guarantee that you'll be successful. And actually, the only guarantee is that if you think you're going to fail, yes, you will indeed fail. So, but this concept of self-fulfilling prophecies has been a big part of why I can jump into these. You know, startups aren't for everyone. You really come in with a leap of faith. Saying,
hey, you have to believe.
I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to figure this out. We're going to make it happen. So that's one. The second one is trust, which we talked about a little bit. And to me, trust is the foundation for teamwork. And what trust first really means is that you spend a lot of time finding the right people to work with. So we spend an inordinate amount of time hiring, you know, interviewing folks, looking for the right people. But we begin the relationship with trust. You come in, you're trusted from day one at Everactive. I've been in environments where trust must be earned. Before you're part of the team, you really have to show that you can, you know, you can do your thing and be trusted. And so I have specifically chosen that we will take the risk on people. We will say, no, we trust you. Come in, do your job. You know, if you don't live up to that trust, that's a problem, and
Sure.
we'll deal with those problems. But we start with the idea that trust is the foundation for teamwork, and we all need to work together and with that in mind. And then the third one is pride in the mission of the company and in the value that the products are delivering to the customers, and pride in our individual accomplishments as well as the organization overall. And that it's the test of would you be comfortable telling your mother what you're doing? Mm-hmm. And yes, indeed. Day in, day out, I'm proud of what Everactive is working to accomplish and the way we go about it, and the way people work together. So that's self-fulfilling prophecies, trust, and pride have been kind of a driving force behind my management philosophy throughout my career.
That's great. Thank you. As you think about, you talked about trusting first and taking a thoughtful approach to bringing on additional members of the team. As you think about recruiting or developing company leaders, any other qualities or characteristics you tend to look for in them?
Well, yeah, obvious, but intelligence and expertise in their area of responsibility is key. I would say another one is the ability to listen and learn from other folks. So, you come in with a certain degree of expertise, but you have to learn the environment and be able to work with other teams. But, along with that, the ability to speak up and be candid, when you're evaluating people, providing feedback, when you're evaluating your own organization or even the company as a whole. And that's one of the things, like with our leadership team at Everactive, we spend a lot of focused time being candid and talking about the problems and the concerns that we have for the company, whether they're the things we're dealing with today or things that we think we might be dealing with as we go forward. And I guess the last one would really be the dedication to the team and the values and the idea that we're working together to build each other up, as opposed to creating a competitive environment where you're trying to tear others down. So that's probably the top of my list. There's probably more, but that's where to start.
Yeah, that's a great list. So thank you for sharing that. One of the things I always like to ask my guests, and I think I've found just some great nuggets from, how do you personally keep yourself sharp and innovative, right? You're on the front edge, this batteryless IoT, how do you keep yourself sharp and innovative around that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, especially for an old guy like me. One of the things when I do talk to companies, like when I was looking for Everactive, I would get some younger investors that would ask me questions like, why do you still want to do this? Do you have the energy, and how do you have the drive to go do this? And it's to me a stupid question. Of course I do. I know better than anybody else what it takes to go do this, and I'm excited to do it. What keeps me sharp is really the people that I surround myself with. So I've been doing this a long time, and I have some preconceived notions, but I can't tell you how many times I've been challenged by someone that's more recently gone through business school than my 30 plus years ago, 35 years ago, and or someone that's read a book, or someone that's just got an idea, and so creating that environment where they're comfortable to challenge me and say, hey, what about this? What if we tried this approach? And then staying open, listening to that, and being willing to learn from those great people, I think is really the key to. It's what excites me every day. It's why I get up and go to work, as well as how I stay sharp and invigorated to do this.
That's great. It is one of those almost strange paradoxes as we age. If we really understand that learning, being challenged by others is actually a gift. It's not a knock on our ego or pride or something. It's actually a gift, and I seek that as well. So I can greatly appreciate that from your perspective.
And one of the big things is to make people comfortable to do that. Because
That's right.
I could be a strong personality, and I know that, and I do have my opinions as well. And I appreciate that people listen to me, but they have to be comfortable to be able to say, you know what, I have a different opinion,
That's right.
and know that even though I may not like it, I will listen to it, and we can have an intelligent, data-driven conversation around it. So that's been a big part in terms of developing the team and the executives at Everactive, is to say, yep, okay, I'm a strong personality, but so are you. Let's listen to each other.
Yeah, well, and I heard you say earlier this, kind of intellectual honesty is a core value. One of the things I often say is I don't ever have to be right. I'll probably be right now and again, but I don't show up to a conversation having to be right. I want to find the best possible answer, and I can sense from you that you really adopt that as well. Is, hey, let's create a safe environment where we can have a really healthy discussion, debate, dialogue, and hopefully the best possible answer and idea comes out of it.
Absolutely. And if there's a better way to do it than the way I've been doing it for the last 20 years, absolutely, I want to adopt that better way.
Absolutely. So. Very cool. Well, Bob, we're coming up on the time here. Last question. When you think of, someone in your shoes, or, entrepreneur maybe a little earlier, trying to get their company off the ground and operating it today, where would you suggest they focus their priority and attention?
That kind of seems like a trick question to me. The answer is, of course, you focus wherever the area that needs your attention the most. So that's part of the beauty of the general manager role, is that you just get to get involved in everything. But I guess if I interpret your question to say, if I had to give a piece of advice to a first-time CEO, and almost regardless of the stage of the company, one of the key things that I think for the role of CEO, besides raising money and keeping the company funded, is to focus on making sure that the vision and strategy for the company is clearly articulated. So you need to know what it is, but more importantly, you need to be able to tell everybody what it is, and to make it simple for everyone to learn and know, deep down, and then to work to make sure that everyone is aligned to that vision. And again, it's the beauty of the startup is that it's all about individuals and personalities, and everyone counts. And if someone's off doing, if they think, hey, that's not the right thing, and they're off doing their own thing, it can be detrimental to the overall mission to the company. So that, I think, is number one thing. Of course, the other thing I would tell them is to spend time developing the culture you want. Don't just take the culture you get. And so that's, and then find out what the problem of the day is and go work on that.
Such powerful perspective there, Bob. I intentionally kept it vague, right? Like that I think is what it unearthed. So such good perspective there. Thank you so much for sharing that and for joining. As we've talked about, you have are at the helm of such an important company in connecting the physical and digital worlds. And I'm excited to follow your progress. I'm grateful for the time and for being able to meet you today. Thanks for joining me.
Well, I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Operate Podcast. If you like this conversation, as a favor to me, you can rate us, review us, or subscribe, or tell your friends. You can also reach out to us on Twitter at Operate Podcast. Until next week, get out there and operate.